If you get an email that's asking you to act urgently and do something that seems out of the ordinary, slow down, think about it, get up from your computer, take a lap around the office, come back cool-headed, and then consider, is this real? Just because you've given data to Google in the past doesn't mean you have to continue to give them data. And just because you don't have anything to, quote, hide, doesn't mean that your privacy isn't important. If your spouse has your Netflix password and you're using the same password for your Gmail account and for your OneDrive account and everything else, now they have access to everything. Buttoning up your social media, buttoning up your emails, your bank accounts, all of that's going to be pivotal in the early stages of a divorce. A lot of clients come in and they're pretty sure that their spouse is James Bond and that they have access to everything. And so they're in need, they're vulnerable, they're worried.
Divorce is often about dividing assets, but in the digital age, there's so much more at stake. Imagine your most private information becoming a weapon in a legal battle. That's where today's guest, Jonathan Steele, comes in. Not only is he a top family attorney specializing in high-stakes divorce cases, but he's also the founder of Steele Fortress, a firm dedicated to protecting the privacy and security of his clients during their most vulnerable times. Today, we're going to explore how Jonathan merges those two worlds to offer unparalleled protection for his clients. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. So let's just jump right in. In the digital age today, what are some of the most common privacy threats that your clients face during divorce proceedings?
You're going to have some nefarious spouses that don't have your best interest at heart. They're going to be trying to find your location wherever they can, whether that's by using things like AirTags or location tracking on your mobile device, because once you have moved out or once they have moved out, they were going to want to keep tabs on you for a variety of different reasons. And so that's going to be one of the biggest privacy concerns.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I always see people complaining about the AirTags and how they alert the other iPhone user that they're following. I'm like, of course they do. They don't want stalkers to use their technology to kill people. It's just crazy.
That's right. It's a recent-ish addition because it was being misused. And so it's a welcomed addition, I think.
Yeah, no, it is. I understand, like, some people are complaining because, like, they'll have a electric bicycle and they'll bury the tag somewhere in the bike. But then the thief knows that it's there and they can get rid of it. I get that part of it. But at the same time, like you said, nefarious people are going to use that technology for nefarious things, and that's not going to be a good thing. So how do you advise your clients to protect their personal information then when they're going through a divorce?
It's a triage thing. It's the first and most important thing, as far as I'm concerned, is securing communication methods with me. And so that's going to be buttoning up their email surface, securing the instant messaging that we're going to use, whether we're going to move over to Signal away from iMessage, whether we're going to try to harden their emails a little bit. And then certainly we're not going to be using any sort of email attachments when we send emails to each other. We're going to use a secure upload portal with expiring links so that if the spouse gets access to my client's inbox, what they have is just a bunch of expired links and not email attachments.
No, that's brilliant. Gosh, more than 10 years ago now, when I went through my divorce, my attorney had me create an email address that she wouldn't know about and not use it for anything but communication with my attorney. I remember thinking at the time, it's a mitigating factor, but someone could easily find out what my email is, especially if it's on my phone or I have it open. It'd be easy to find out. So I like that. I like the idea of expiring links. I think more people should use that. Where is there a situation you could talk about where cybersecurity played an important role in protecting a client's interest during a divorce?
Yeah, pretty often, along with the privacy risk that I spoke of earlier, when it comes to location tracking, something that's often overlooked is surveillance cameras and the continued access that the spouse may have once they've moved out. And if you have Nest cams or you have Ring cams or whatever it may be, if you haven't cut off access to those cameras once your spouse has moved out, they got a pretty good picture of what you're doing on a daily basis.
Feeling overwhelmed? Drowning into deuce? It's time to reclaim your life and transform your leadership. The Decentralized A-Team Handbook gives you the strategies to build a high-performing, autonomous team. Delegate effectively. Communicate with impact. Achieve extraordinary results.
she's moved on to a new relationship. She's dating another guy, and on the following dates and times, she's gone out with him, which raised the question, how does he know that? And so then it was just trying to peel back that onion a little bit and figure out, how is it that your spouse has access? Is it a mobile device issue? Is it a tracking issue? And eventually we discovered it was, he still had access to all the surveillance cameras.
Yeah, I'd imagine another common one would be like having a kind of a shared iPad that you leave behind, and all your messages are going through to the shared iPad. Yeah, that I can see how that could be super problematic. The divorce I went through was not contentious at all, but I can only imagine if it was, especially if there's a lot of money at stake. I can only imagine the lengths that someone would go to. Are there any tools or strategies that you recommend for safeguarding your online communications and data when you're going through a legal battle?
Yeah, it's hard to sell clients on the concept nowadays. To the extent you can harden your social media, if not get off of social media, that's going to go a long way. A lot of people's Instagram accounts are public. Going private can help. Going through your followers list and making sure you really know all of the people that are in your followers list and they're not connected to your spouse, that can go a long way. Along the triage lines of just making sure that your communication methods are secure, whether it's with your attorney or your accountant or whoever it may be, moving away from certainly SMS text messages or moving on to something like Signal that has ephemeral messaging. And so it deletes after a period of time, or can if you enable that. And then moving on to a more privacy respecting and more secure email provider that may also come along with cloud storage that's more privacy focused and cybersecurity aware. And so whether that's Proton Mail or wherever I can push a client to be a little more secure, a little bit more private. A lot of clients are a little resistant to change, and they are pretty in love with Gmail for its convenience features. And that's understandable. It is convenient. It's a smooth process. And from a security perspective, I think they do a pretty good job. It's just from a privacy perspective, they don't.
Yeah. It also, like, when you mentioned that, it actually shocked my brain a little bit. When you mentioned they still have access to like your Ring doorbell account, or I can even imagine like here in Vegas, we have a Cox Home security system. And they told us that when we move, we call them up, they'll take all the physical equipment and move it to another place. But the digital connection stays the same. So you can only imagine if two people are living together, married, and then they're getting a divorce and one moves and takes the equipment with them. Now, what if there's inside the house cameras? That person now has access to see everything that's going on.
That's a real concern. And the one you touched on about a shared device, you mentioned it for the risk of having messages that are being copied over, whether it's iMessage or through an iCloud account, but there's also photos that are being synced across your devices.
Right.
And those photos that you're taking on a daily basis, finding their way into your spouse's hands, are going to prove problematic unless you're a saint. Most people are not.
So how have you seen digital evidence like emails, social media posts, images impact the outcome of a divorce case?
Social media in particular can have a big impact on custody cases. A lot of times people are emotional when they're going through a divorce. They're vengeful. They are angry at their spouse, and all of those are normal. But the outlet for those sometimes isn't appropriate. Sometimes that's just going on social media and bashing your spouse, and that person is the father of your child or the mother of your child. The things you're saying are going to come back to bite you when you're sitting in front of a judge having a trial about which parent is more likely to facilitate a relationship with the child and the other parent. And then when you're fighting for more parenting time and your social media posts are reflecting that when you had parenting time, you were bar hopping, then there's the question of, why are we giving you more parenting time if you're not even exercising it? And so people don't always think about that until they're sitting in a trial or a week before a trial and they get exhibits dumped on them. And so a lot of times it's social media that ends up being a nail in the coffin.
It's funny how people are so used to doing things a certain way that they don't even bother to think about the effect of what they're doing. I think it come to mind the viral situation of the man who was appearing on a virtual court hearing. And I guess it had something to do with him having a suspended driver's license. And he was driving the car on the Zoom call, and he's, hold on a second, I'm pulling into the parking lot. And then the judge is like, what the heck are you doing? You're not supposed to be driving. You don't even have a driver's license. And you're like, you think to yourself, how are you so dumb that you don't realize that I'm in trouble for driving without a license? But here I am in the court hearing driving without a license. And it's interesting because probably years ago, we would have never seen that because you have to appear physically in court with the digital one. So how do you see the role of cybersecurity evolving in the field of family law?
I think that the threats that people face are going to become more prevalent. They're going to become more severe. And so cybersecurity, the role that it plays, the importance of it is just going to increase. And it's a friction point for a lot of people, for a lot of clients. They don't want to click the extra link. They don't want to type in a 6-digit code to download something. But as you start to see the risks and what happens if you don't do it, and trying to think about all of the cleanup after the fact, that is far more time consuming, I think more and more people are going to recognize, okay, I need to do this. And I think one of the biggest threats from a cybersecurity perspective that people face nowadays is phishing. And once upon a time, those were pretty easy to spot. It was garbled English. It was wire money overseas to a Nigerian prince. That didn't sound all that plausible. But now people are feeding AI written emails into their phishing campaigns, and they sound a lot more realistic. They're much more difficult to identify as being nefarious. And with every good tool comes a bad use. And so while AI has obviously good applications, it has the potential for bad. And that's one bad application of it that's making the risks that people face worse and more frequent. And I think it's just going to continue as time goes on.
You've obviously used ChatGPT.
Sure.
Yes. I had a conversation recently with someone that was looking for work, and I kept asking them about their ability to communicate clearly. And they said, how have you felt about this communication? And so that's why I'm asking you, because I happen to notice that every single thing you send to me is in quotes. And that's how ChatGPT provides it. So I'm suspicious that's what you're using. So if you pay attention, you can catch those things. But if someone's smart, you get around it. And you're right. Like, they could send you an email. I had a friend years ago that did ethical hacking, and he would pay attention to like places where someone was online and potentially child porn or whatever. And he'd try to connect to their machine using Windows Explorer, using the networking tools. And if that didn't work, he'd find out what their email address is. He'd send to them like, hey, someone sent you a card, and click this link. And it would take them to like the Yahoo screen, and then they type in their password. Well, guess what? That got sent to him, and he could get into their account. There's so many tricks that people use. So you really, phishing, you're right. It used to be so easy to tell. Nowadays, it's just tricky, and they have all their little things they do to mask what they're up to. If you were giving advice to other attorneys who want to incorporate cybersecurity practices into their legal services, what would you tell them?
Starting with phishing, just because it was the most recent thing we've mentioned, I think telling people to slow down is an important thing to think about, particularly as an attorney. It's fast paced. You have to make decisions quickly. You're on the clock all the time, and you're billing and billing. But if you get an email that's asking you to act urgently and do something that seems out of the ordinary, slow down, think about it, get up from your computer, take a lap around the office, come back cool headed, and then consider, is this real? Is this something that I need to act on? And if you're still unsure, try to confirm by another means. If the request came in by email, try to confirm the sender by phone. So I think that's going to help a lot with phishing. And then law is resistant to change, so it's going to be hard to sell for law firms that are really ingrained with Microsoft and Office and Outlook email. But it's possible to move the back end of an email service to something more privacy respecting without a lot of friction, without the users even really knowing that the back end is something more secure, like a Proton mail. And so getting law firms to be more privacy focused is going to pay dividends, because anytime we leak client data, it's bad for our reputation. And so if we're known as protecting our clients' privacy and our clients' security, that's something that our clients are going to appreciate. And prioritizing communication, ensuring that while there is more friction to things like secure links, it's a better practice. And accepting email attachments, while it's easier, it's messy. And you have to field some phone calls from some clients and walk them through the process and answer questions for them. And there's a learning curve, no doubt, but it's worth it. And I think that would be the advice that I would give to lawyers at whatever size law firms, would be to take the time to invest in a better cybersecurity posture and something that's.
When you were talking about checking things out, it reminds me of way back being in wood shop and them telling me, measure twice, cut once. And it's really true. Check the thing. Make sure. I routinely, when I get emails that look strange, I'll look at the from address and be like, okay, supposedly you're writing me from a law firm, but your address is bob123@gmail.com. That's a little suspicious there. I'm act with much caution. But what if someone wanted to like digitally disappear during a divorce? No social media, no digital traces. How feasible do you think that is? And do you think it would actually take?
Complete disappearance is tough. It requires much more friction than most people are willing to endure. But there are little things you can do that aren't difficult that have big gains. For anybody that is interested and willing to invest the time in reading, Michael Basil does a lot of books on the subject about how to disappear. And he goes from a novice route all the way up to pretty extreme. And so that would be a good starting point for somebody that's interested in learning about it. In today's age, a complete disappearance, it's pretty tough. And it requires probably crossing a couple lines as far as what's actually legal to keep yourself completely invisible. As far as keeping yourself more private and masking some of your purchases and your transactions, there are things you can do that aren't that difficult. Most of that's going to be compartmentalization, having an identity for shopping, an identity for dating, an identity for work, and keeping everything segregated. You're going to have a different email address for each of those. You're going to have a different VoIP phone number for each of those, maybe a different browser for each of those. And keeping that separation is going to help a lot.
So have you ever had a situation where one spouse went to like extreme lengths to become digitally untraceable?
I haven't. As much as I try to encourage people to go that route, no. From what I've experienced, most people are, they're of the mindset, I don't have anything to hide, and who cares about privacy, or privacy is dead, or it's all out there anyway, it's a lost cause. And it's discouraging to hear. Just because you've given data to Google in the past doesn't mean you have to continue to give them data. And just because you don't have anything to, quote, hide doesn't mean that your privacy isn't important. And so long as that misconception is rampant, people are going to buy into it. You know, what you do in your bathroom is no secret, but it is private. And so you have a door on your bathroom. You have blinds on your house. Why? What you're doing inside isn't a secret, but you don't want the people standing outside your house to see into your home at all times. So there's a meaningful distinction between privacy and secrecy. And most people that I've encountered, they don't like the friction. They like something that's easy, that's effortless. And so they are hard to move on to something that is more privacy respecting.
Yeah, even me, we live gated community, but we're on a cul-de-sac and it's quiet over here. So when we first moved in my office, I had to completely reset it up because I have about 5 guitars in here and I want to be able to have the blinds open during the day when I'm in here, but then I close them when I leave. I had to set it up so that you could not just from the street look in the window and see the guitars there because someone would break through the window and come in to steal them. That started me thinking about other aspects of my life that maybe I'm a little exposed. And I started doing a bit of an audit on that. And even as a technology professional, there were things that I was like, wow, I can't believe I did that. Better fix that. One of the things I wonder about is this one intrigues me. Do you see a time maybe where couples might be fighting over digital assets like virtual real estate and avatars during a divorce?
Yes, is the short answer. I've already seen a little bit of that. The first that came to mind when you asked was cryptocurrency already being fought about. And then I'm also now seeing fights over domain names. And so if you ran a small business with your spouse during your marriage and it had a website, that website's built up some personal goodwill associated with it and it has a value to it.
Yeah.
And so that's something that people end up fighting about as domain names, as certainly crypto. So yeah, they're digital assets like anything else. And then I see fights over digital photos. It used to be you'd fight over physical photo albums, but now it's I want a copy of a digital album from a family trip or videos or whatever it may be. And people are fighting over that. And those are hard to enforce because if somebody says, I don't have it, it's hard to prove.
Yeah,
Hard
I
to prove a
can prove it.
negative.
Yeah. So do you think there's such a thing as digital karma in divorce cases where someone's shady online behavior comes back to haunt them in court?
I don't know about karma, but shady behavior can take a toll on somebody as far as how the court looks at them. If you have obtained evidence in a way that was not legal, whether it's you put an AirTag on your spouse or you put a camera in their home when you were doing a parenting time exchange, or you surreptitiously gained access to their email. And so now you have access to their shopping history and you're trying to use all that evidence. Most judges aren't going to let you. Most judges are going to say that's fruit of the poisonous tree and they're going to bar that evidence. And so I think in that context, there's some karma, bad acts.
I wonder sometimes people tend to do things and not really think about the ramifications. Like, for instance, hacking into someone's email account. It's illegal. They don't even realize, thinking about, it's my soon to be ex. What's the harm? It's illegal. You're not supposed to be hacking into other people's private accounts. So what steps should someone take early on in a divorce to make sure that their digital life stays secure?
I think making sure that you're using both unique and strong passwords. You hear that repeated across the community pretty often if you follow security or privacy at all, but for good reason. If your spouse has your Netflix password and you're using the same password for your Gmail account and for your OneDrive account and everything else, now they have access to everything. And so if you had a different password for everything, ideally one that is complex, and the human brain has a hard time creating complex passwords. That's why we use password managers. That's going to go a long way. And then using multi-factor authentication on your sensitive accounts, whether that's your banking, your email, things like that's going to be an important step as well. Yes, it's a little bit more friction. Yes, it takes a little bit more time, but the time spent on the back end trying to clean up the mess that comes from not protecting yourself is tenfold. If you're hell-bent on continuing to use Gmail, I can't sell you otherwise. You're an adult. But Gmail has some good multi-factor authentication options available to you. Use a hardware security key. Use a pass key. That's going to help a lot. That's going to make it much, much more difficult for your spouse to get access to your emails, and your emails are a treasure trove. You may think, I'm not sending a lot of revealing emails with people, that's in text messages or whatever. But what it is, a combination of all of your shopping receipts and your travel receipts and your Uber receipts and your DoorDash receipts and everything that tells the story of what you did from the moment you woke up until the moment you went to bed. And so that's going to be helpful for somebody that's trying to work against you. Buttoning up your social media, buttoning up your emails, your bank accounts, all of that's going to be pivotal in the early stages of a divorce.
Yeah, we once had an employee who was being accused of some kind of criminal malfeasance, and it was all based off of one person who came forward. And when he read the interview, he gave them the evidence because the other person didn't realize that all those email communications that they had, he kept them. And so they said everything completely the opposite of what was in the email. But of course, those emails happened real time as the thing was going on. They happened. So it was very clear, oh, this guy's a liar. And since our entire case is based off of a liar, we're not going anywhere with this. So I think that's another thing that people need to remember is if you think a situation that you're in might result in court, keep the emails. Make sure you have them for later. Have you ever had somebody like go full on James Bond, spyware, hacking to try to gain the upper hand?
I have clients that are pretty sure that their spouse is doing that. I've not been able to confirm that's happening, but I have been able to walk clients through the steps to helping them sleep at night and make sure that's not happening. Apple does a good job. They have a feature in their iPhones called Safety Check that walks you through the permissions that you've given to someone, helps you ungive those permissions or to retract them. And there are similar tools depending on what ecosystem you're in. And so helping them navigate unplugging access to surveillance cameras. And some clients even go as far as asking me to have a private investigator come to their homes and do a sweep for cameras that they didn't know about or trackers that they didn't know about. And sometimes they do discover trackers. Sometimes they do discover cameras. Whether that rises to the level of James Bond or not, I don't know. But a lot of clients come in and they're pretty sure that their spouse is James Bond and that they have access to everything. And so they're in need, they're vulnerable, they're worried. And so I like to be able to help them navigate that, walk them through unplugging that, because you're not just separating from your spouse physically, you're unplugging from them digitally. And that's important to keep in mind.
When your skill set is very unique. I'm always one who, like, if I have to have surgery for something and aftercare instructions are a certain way, and maybe it says don't climb stairs for 2 weeks. I'm not climbing the stairs for 2 weeks. I paid that person for a reason. And I would hope that your clients understand your expertise and would listen to you. Sounds like sometimes they don't, but that's just people, right? Like, people don't want to change, and they don't want to, if something's a little bit friction, they don't want to deal with it. But this has really been interesting. Could you let the audience know if they want to connect with you and find out more? Maybe they want to hire you. Let us know where to find you.
I have a website, steelefortress.com. That's dedicated to my privacy and cybersecurity consulting business. So if you head over to my website, it's got all my contact information. Awesome. And you can reach me there.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for all the time you spent with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks everybody for being here today for another episode of Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge. New episodes every Wednesday, 8 a.m. Pacific time. Hope to see you back again next week.